You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. In this show, we go beyond the campfire stories to bring you firsthand encounters from people who say they've seen something impossible, from backwoods trails and remote mountain haulers to quiet farms and crowded highways. The stories come from everywhere, and each one leaves us with more questions than answers. These are the voices of the people who've lived it, so settle in, because today you'll hear another account that just might change the way you see the woods forever. So stay with us. All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to Gina and Steve today. Gina and Steve are a couple that I reached out to through a comment that I saw on Facebook, and we got connected that way. They're out there in Idaho. They've had some interesting things happen over the years. Welcome to the show, Gina and Steve. How are you guys doing today?
Thank you. Wonderful.
Doing great.
Fantastic. Definitely had some interesting conversations about Idaho in the past, so it'll be interesting to see where this conversation takes us as well out there. But guys, we did talk about before the show started is that I think it would be best if we went through this chronologically. And so we'll have you start with what you think that the first experience that you may have had out there is.
Okay, it started in the bicentennial day of the United States in it was around 1998. That's sure no, it'd be 77. I was about 13. And me and four of my friends were walking west of my hometown. This is in New York, up between the St. Lawrence River and the Adirondack Mountains. And we were headed west to a bridge that's a popular hangout. And we would hike up the road, which was abandoned and tore up, or the railroad tracks. So this day we decided to take the tracks to the bridge, and we got about 2/3 of the way there. It's only about a 1.5 mile walk from town to this bridge. And down the tracks, there was a section that was straight as an arrow for quite a ways, and it's heavily wooded. That part of the state's pretty heavily wooded. We saw something about 1/4 mile up the tracks that crossed the tracks in 2 steps. It was on 2 legs. It was very large. And we all stopped because we were totally flabbergasted by what we saw. And we didn't elaborate on anything. We just all agreed that it was time to head back to town. It was in the summer, early afternoon. And that's that one. So that's my first time I saw anything. My second experience was I was camping alone in a tent near Idaho City, which is just southeast of Boise a bit. And I was solo camping. I was in a creek area. This was in 1987. And I went to sleep. And about 4 o'clock in the morning, I didn't hear any noises, no thumping around or anything, but I had something grab my head through the tent. And in those days, the dome tents were really small, so your head was up against the wall of the tent, if that makes sense. And I felt something grab my head and pull away really fast. And it happened 4 or 5 times within about, I'd probably say about 5 minutes. And it was still dark out, and I attributed that to probably rodent or squirrel, something like that. But later on, hearing other people's stories about being touched through tent walls, I went, that's probably what it was, because there wouldn't be anything that early in the morning walking around at night. I wouldn't think so, but anyhow, if you have any questions about that, feel free.
Absolutely. So when you say it grabbed your head, was it like it was trying to palm your head like a basketball, or it was like a small hand that was just trying to like gently?
I felt several digits touch my head at the same time, so it was more like a grasping touch. But the more I think about it, have you ever seen like a chimpanzee or something touch something real quick and pull their hand back?
Yeah.
It was like that. And there was no noise, no odor, nothing. Other than that, I went back to sleep and I woke up. That was my second kind of retrospect experience that I had.
So what was it's pretty wild that happened 4 to 5 times at all, really. I've been in a situation in a tent where something was walking around outside And that pretty much made me go nuts. How was your emotional state when you were experiencing something touching your head throughout the tent?
I was just, go away, leave me alone, shoosh, get. But another thing, too, that's important is I don't think there was any noise because the area I had my tent pitched on was very mossy. It was creekside. So there was like a lot of watercress and water moss. It was dry, but it was very comfortable. And that's why I decided to set my tent up there for the evening. I didn't hear anything or smell anything. It was weird, but I attributed it to just a nuisance. As at the time, I didn't think of what else it could have been. But over the years, listening to other people's experiences on your podcast and others, that might not have been a rodent that night.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned that it was a mossy area. Did you notice anything out of the ordinary in the area around your campsite when you got up the next day?
There were no tracks. My camp gear was undisturbed. I really didn't see anything out of the ordinary. To give you a little background, I served in the military. I'm a combat veteran. I'm an avid outdoorsman. I was trained in survival by one of the TV celebrity survivalists. And I don't know what is going on, but at the time, it was just seeking for the obvious of what it could be. And I didn't feel bothered, wasn't scared. I didn't have any overwhelming emotions or feelings going through my body at the time, other than the fact that I woke up when I was sleeping good.
Absolutely. So that background makes more sense than why you weren't really freaked out, because you were trained to deal with high pressure, high stress situations is what it sounds like. Did you have any bruising on your head at all that you noticed the next day?
No, it was very gentle. It was like, it wasn't any more forceful than you touching a basketball sitting on the ground, just touching it. It was just a touch, a really small squeeze, and then a quick withdrawal. And it happened 4 or 5 times.
Have you been back to that area ever?
No, I've moved away from that area since then. But as we progress later on, there are a few areas I won't go back into.
Okay, gotcha.
I would probably go back up there again. I don't think I'd feel bad about going back in there.
Absolutely. Steve, that's quite a way to start things off for you, where in your sighting in 76, you saw something on 2 legs cross the tracks. Did you notice any details about the thing that was crossing the tracks in front of you?
It was really large. We all stopped. We didn't say, our eyes were like wide open looking at each other. What the heck was that? And if you look at a set of railroad tracks, you have the tracks themselves, which are probably about 6 feet wide. And then you've got 8 foot of gravel on either side of those rails going back into the forest. That thing walked across the tracks in 2 steps. It just looked weird to us, and it was big. And like I said, it was a straight shot, so it was like we were looking through kind of like the trees don't cover the tracks at all, but it was like looking through a keyhole. It was there. We all saw it, and it really freaked us out. But we just stopped, didn't discuss it, turned around and walked off. And we were 12 or 13 years old. There was a couple guys older than me, a couple younger than me, but we all just looked at each other and decided that it would be a good idea to turn around and walk back to town.
Absolutely. How far away from you guys was it again?
About a quarter of a mile down the tracks.
Okay. Gotcha.
But you could see it. It was like a straight shot down the tracks, and you can see forever on those things.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, it's very interesting stuff right off the bat. Feel free to continue, guys.
Okay, my next one was in the mid-90s, and this one's kind of going to be a little more intense than the other one, and the reason being that the area has a history. So I was in the South Hills of Idaho at the time. My first Idaho experience, I was stationed at Mountain Home Air Force Base, and I was living in Boise. I was going to school, and so I'd commute. Later on in life, I was in the Mini-Cassia area, which would be Cassia County and Minidoka County, in an area called the South Hills, particularly in Rock Creek Canyon. And it's a pretty heavily used recreation area. I was a little southeast of that area in an area called Skyline Ridge. And it's a ridge that divides 2 valleys And I was sitting in a creek called Rash Creek. And I was sitting on the sagebrush hillside overlooking a creek, the creek itself that was filled with like tules. And I was there about a half an hour, and everything went quiet. There was no birds, no bugs, nothing. And the weird thing was the air got very stifled. It was kind of like being a donut in one of those donut glass cover things that you see in diners. It was just stifled. And the light had like a very light hue of yellow, kind of like a watered down lemonade color. It was really weird. And so I was sitting there just waiting for the deer to come up and down through the creek bed because I was hunting. And I had a cantaloupe-sized rock land to my right by about 20 feet. And it thumped and rolled down the hill into the creek bed. So I automatically thought someone was messing with me. And so I stood up and I turned around and yelled, "Hey, knock it off. I'm trying to hunt. Leave me alone," whatever. And when I stood up to do that, I witnessed another rock, slightly smaller, lobbed out of the tree line, which was about 75 feet behind me where the first rock came from, right? I don't know where the first rock came from. It could have been the same spot. I wasn't looking at it, just saw it land and roll down the hill. So the smaller rock comes out. It was lobbed out of the trees. I heard some stomping around a little bit, and I got really nervous, so I chambered around in my rifle. Excuse me. And I immediately started walking back down the trail, back to my four-wheeler, which was probably about a quarter mile away. And I wanted to know if it was someone messing with me. So I paralleled the trail in hopes of drawing whatever was behind me to the side of me so I could get an eyeball on it. And that, whatever it was, it knew where I was at the whole time. And when I stopped, I was screamed at. And I've heard various screams online, and it sounded like a woman just getting gutted. It was terrible. And the minute I started moving again, the screaming would stop. And I just finally tried navigating back to the trail. I wasn't that far off it, but it was pretty thickety and rocky, so it was hard to navigate on foot. And then there was some thumping, like really loud thumping, not like tree thumps, but like it had a log, and it was thumping the ground. And I went up with a friend the next day, and we did find a fence post sized log that looked like it had been beaten on, but it was thumping the ground like thump that fast. And I was like, there's no way a man could thump the post on the ground that fast. It was ridiculous. So with that said, I ended up getting back to my four-wheeler, firing it up, hightailing it out of there, and I had this sensation that I was being chased. I don't call it spider sense, whatever you want to call it, the EBGBs, whatever. I was like going down the hill way faster than I needed to be going, but I felt impending doom. The fear factor was high. And for me, I don't really get spooked by too much, but that scared the living crap out of me. I got back to my truck, and when I got off the four-wheeler and shut it off, I noticed that the atmosphere had changed back to what it was prior to my experience. The bugs were out, the birds were out, the color of the air was different. And so I loaded up my machine and I got home. And now that I'm talking about it, it shakes me up just a little bit thinking about it, more so than I have. But that was pretty much it. Next day, me and my friend went up there. We went back up on the trail, showed him where I sat. We found this, like I said, it was about a fence post sized piece of log pine sitting on the trail. There was nothing. And it was a part of the trail that I had walked up into, and it wasn't there before, so I'm assuming. And then we found some divots in the ground from it that were a couple inches deep, and it had the curvature of the log. So something was in there beating that pole or that piece of wood on the ground, and it was pounding it fast. That was pretty much it for that one.
That's some wild stuff, Steve.
Sounds crazy. But
You're a gutsy dude to start paralleling whatever that was.
I thought it was a human at first.
Yeah.
And then when I heard the screaming, it was like, this is not what I think it is, and I just need to get my keister out of here. There's 2 areas that are nearby.
All right.
It's the City of Rocks National Monument. It's a rock formation monument, has unusual rock formations, and it's also a place where a lot of world-class rock climbers go to climb the various rock features.
Okay.
And then Elba Park and Albion, Mount Harrison, Oakley, those would be some other. That area, southern Idaho, is spread out. So
I got it.
Landmarks will probably bounce you in the right area versus towns.
Okay, so it's just on a map, it shows up as a pretty big green area underneath Albion. This whole area we're talking about. All right, got it. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate
that. And also historically on Mount Cleveland, there's like a crater lake up there. And if you hike up on the back side of that, there's an old scout camp that used to be up there, and they don't camp up there anymore. I've heard of stories when I lived down there of things running around up there. At the time, I didn't think too hard on that. It's just, I deal with the obvious. I'm a pretty straightforward, logical guy. I don't know. It was just a weird experience. That was probably my most fearful experience for me personally.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna let my wonderful wife cut into our first camping trip up to an area that.
It's my Dogman.
Are you gonna do the Dogman now?
Yeah, the next one, because that was in order. So this is prior. This was prior when me meeting Steve in late 1990s. I was trying to figure out the year, probably about 97. Some friends and I, and this is in town, and we live in Idaho Falls, and it was in town on a not terribly busy street on weekdays, but it's definitely a part of town. And it's residential, and then there's some businesses on this older street in town. And so we were at dinner across town with 5 of us. There were 5 adults, my father and some friends celebrating a dinner. And I got a phone call from a friend that had a couple drinks, and she lived on this older street in this other part of town, and asked if I could give her a ride. She didn't want to drive. And I said, we're finishing up with dinner. I'll have them drop me off there, and I will drive your vehicle home, and they'll pick me up. And she said, okay. So I said, give me a half hour. We get over there, and there's only street parking and alley parking. And again, it's an older part of town. So we parked in the back and walked in. I grabbed her, and they decided to stay and have a quick beer to give me time to get her home. So we exited on the street side, and she said, I parked 2 buildings down in the little parking lot. So as we're walking down to the parking lot, her truck was in the middle of the parking lot, the only truck out there. So we're walking through, and as we approach her truck, this thing, and it was tangible. I shake my head because I'm still blown away by this. It was on 2 legs. And I said, don't look at it. She started screaming, and I said, cover your eyes, don't look at it. I had no fear, surprisingly. And it was walking towards her truck. It was probably about 6 to 7 feet tall, really lanky, long arms and long fingers. And I was looking peripheral. I didn't want to look. For some reason, I just knew not to look in its eyes. They were reddish. And so I said, just keep your head on the truck and walk calmly and just act like you don't acknowledge it. And then a lot of times I've heard that helps. So we walked, and in the meantime, she's screaming and covering her eyes. And I just told her to be quiet in not so nice of words. And she's reached down and started fumbling for her keys. And as I'm trying to open the door, she's standing. For some reason, I sensed that this thing wanted her. And I put her behind me, and it was still walking up towards the truck. And then she notified me that she didn't have the door key to that door. So we had to back up. I said, back up and walk around to the other side. We're not going to run. We're not going to be scared. And she's just panicking. So I not pushed her, but guided her while I was facing that thing, but my head was looking sideways. And I was trying to get a good visual from my peripheral vision. It was that close. It was probably about 10 feet at that point. We walked around to the other side of the truck. This thing was by the tire, and I was 3 feet from it. And it was leaping, or not leaping, it had gone down on all fours, and it was swaying side to side, but obviously intent on looking behind me at her. It was the strangest thing. And I was very calm, got her in, and I literally had to walk back around the truck, and I faced it the whole time. I backed up, and she opened the driver's side, got in. As I got in, this thing leaped up on the hood, and we shut the doors and locked them. And her head was down, and I was putting the key in the ignition, and my head was down. I was trying to look at it through the corner of my eye to get a full visual and get as many details as possible. The truck was literally lobbing side to side too. That's how much pressure it was putting. And this lasted for probably about 20 seconds. And in the meantime, the party that I was with had gotten in the truck and come down the alley and stopped. The headlights were there and stopped, and they saw it as well. And it stopped moving and bouncing the truck side to side, and it leaped clear across the entire parking lot and alley into a residential yard over a fence, and we have no idea where it went after that. The truck, I hadn't moved yet. I was still calm, but wondering what the heck just happened. And the other truck of the party I was with pulled up and said, what was that? And I said, I don't know. I just need to get her home. Just follow me. So we did that, and all the way there, she said, what was that? I said, I don't know. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Let's just get you home. Anyway, so we were all silent. Once I got her home and I got in the truck, and they were like, what the heck was that? What happened? And I said, I don't know. I just need to get home. I guess it was my coping mechanism just to get home. Once I got inside, I was shaking like crazy. And AOL was the big thing at that time. So I was online on my big computer looking at anything and everything to try to figure out what this thing was. But I did write down the description so I wouldn't forget. And I didn't ever find anything. I looked at chupacabras, I looked at werewolves, and they were just too furry. And I had no idea what this thing was. But since podcasts, I have heard multiple descriptions that I'm like, I know what it was. It was a Dogman. I'd never heard of such a thing. So I'm almost certain that's what it was. And then she called me the next morning at 5:00 in the morning. Did we see what I thought we saw? And I said, I don't know. Why don't you describe to me what you think you saw? And her description was right online. It was on target. And I said, yes, we did. So anyway, but it makes me shake thinking about it. It's so real. And I've told the story to friends, and it's just, I don't know what it was. And I hope I never see one again.
Wow. So Dogman is a thing where if it comes up organically in the episode, then I'm cool with it. I will never, as of right now, I'll never really pursue after it. But man, it's I don't know how to handle it, because you hear these stories and you're like, I've never heard a good one. It is always extremely potentially violent or going after the people. You hear some Bigfoot stories, and it's, it helped my kid who got lost, or it helped get the rock off my leg and I could get back home. But that doesn't happen in these. So were you able, 3 feet away is really close. Were you able to see facial features?
Yeah. Yes, I wrote this description down because I was looking online and I wanted to have every detail. I didn't want to forget anything. And I can tell you, this thing was long and lanky. It had odd legs. And this, again, I'm looking peripheral. Initially I saw it walking up, and then I just knew not to look at it. Once I saw red eyes, I'm like, turn your head. But I was looking and trying to get every detail I could. And that close, it had a gray pasty skin. A lot of skin was showing, but lots of tufts of fur, sporadic throughout the whole thing. The upper arms had fur. The hands did not have much fur, and they were really long, jointy fingers. And when it got down on all four, I could see those as it swayed back and forth. It had a pointy face, chin area, and it had ears, pointy ears. It had sparse black fur. The fur was all black throughout in various areas. and then the skin again, pasty gray. It had the red eyes. I didn't see teeth. It wasn't like snarling or anything. And it didn't make noise that was anything noteworthy, just hearing it breathe. It didn't growl. And I felt like almost like it couldn't see me. It wasn't allowed to. It was the strangest thing. I felt very protected, and I was calm, and my voice was just like this. I can't believe that I didn't scream myself. But it had, the ears, the hair on its head, on the top of the head, a little bit of hair on the ears, but there was a lot of skin showing as well. And again, the pointy snouty, if you will, snout. It wasn't like a full-on dog nose. It was a little bit smaller. And yeah, the eyes were just creepy as heck. They were big. But the arms, and then the legs, there was something really odd about the legs. And unfortunately, I couldn't see them close up because the body was in front of it. And the spine. It definitely had an odd spine. It was like curved, hunched back over spine. And you could see I don't know, the rolls in it, like a vertebrae. Yeah, thank you, honey. You could definitely see the vertebrae. And it was thicker up top than it was on the lower portion of the body. And I wish I could have seen the feet and the legs better, but the arms were more to the side too. The arms were not like ours are. They were more out to the side. And I guess probably because when he went over on all fours, he was swaying side to side. So his elbows were out, facing out instead of behind. Ours kind of faced back. These were definitely facing out. And then the swaying, there was just so much force in the swaying that it literally was bouncing the truck side to side. It was crazy, but it had its face right up there in the windshield. And my head was down and hers was in her hands. And we just sat there for a second, and then it leapt. It was quite a distance that it leapt. That parking lot was about, how big is that parking lot, Steve? Maybe
50, 60 feet.
Maybe
from end to end, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's not a huge parking lot, but it was big enough. And then the alley, it leaped really high up over a fence, and I didn't see it after that.
Wow.
Crazy, huh?
No, that's wild. It really is. I want to make sure I got something right. So the shape of the face did not necessarily have a super obvious like dog snout like you usually see with Dogman. It was a little different, you're saying?
It wasn't as big. So I envisioned Dogman. Once I heard about Dogman, I thought werewolf. That's all I could think of, is the old werewolf with this big, huge snout. It did have a snout, but it wasn't as big as I would say. For the face, it wasn't as big as you would consider the old school werewolf. But it definitely had a doggish snout. It just wasn't pronounced. It was maybe like a 3-inch, I'm just speculating, nose, snout. But the mouth, it was like a dog snout, but it wasn't like huge like you would expect in the old werewolf movies.
Was it more like a dog's nose then, or like a human's nose?
It was both.
Okay.
It's the strangest thing. It was both. I was trying to figure out, is this I have no idea. But Dogman is definitely, now that I've looked up different drawings that people have seen and heard about it on podcasts, now that I'm aware of it, Dogman, I finally think I have my answer of what it was. But back then I was like, is this a demon? Is this and I've heard of chupacabras, and I've actually heard of those around here as well. There are tales of chupacabra, and I thought, okay, what is a chupacabra? So I started researching that, thinking that might be what this thing is, and there was nothing close. It definitely, Dogman is what I could, if I were to pick what this thing was, I would definitely say Dogman.
Wow. And I don't have the background of where, I know basic things about Dogman, like Land Between the Lakes, Kentucky. Is this area known for sightings that are similar to this, or was this a pretty rare thing to see something like this in Idaho Falls?
Well, probably pretty rare. I have told a few people, and I do have one friend that said that he had seen something similar at one time, but it's nothing I've ever heard of before. But honestly, so 6 of us adults total, saw this thing. And if I would have been alone, I would have questioned my own sanity, because it was the strangest thing in the strangest populated location. And I've lived here all my life. So it was just, I don't even know. I would think I was crazy and I wouldn't tell the story if I didn't have so many witnesses.
Yeah, that's the wild thing is, as you said, there are so many witnesses to this. Were there, I wonder if there was any like security camera footage of that parking lot.
Probably not. Back in the day,
That's true.
It was it's an older area, kind of old buildings that had a couple little businesses in them, but it wasn't a real popular. I doubt the parking lot would have. I don't know.
Also, it's 97, so yeah, it's a little different time period. How did this affect you guys afterwards? Was it hard to move on from this encounter, or I guess you can talk for yourself specifically?
Yeah, we discussed it multiple times, but just in awe. I know the couple that I was at dinner with, our friends, they didn't even want to talk about it. It freaked them out that they just didn't want to talk about it. My father, who has since passed, was also with us. And we talked about it, and he was just like, I have no idea what that was, and I can't believe that it was so calm. I was so calm. And the girl that I picked up that night, I don't talk to her or see her often, but for weeks on end, we were online looking, actually months, and still to this day, when I met Steve years later, in 2009, I told him about it, and he was helping me. So it's been on my mind often. And my kids, when I got home and I told them about it, they were teenagers, and they helped me look online, and they still talk about it. So it's something that I'll never forget. I've told this story so many times.
I've been trying to create imagery using what you have given me for descriptions, and it's absolutely horrifying stuff. I probably have nightmares from this. Just the way it looks is crazy.
Oh no.
I don't want you to have nightmares. I'll be fine. But I'm just saying, I can't imagine what you went through being there.
Yeah, I did have some dreams, and my daughter asked me right after that, after she had heard about it, I told him, just be careful when you guys are out. This thing really happened, and Grandpa can verify it. Your dad can verify it. So-and-so can verify it. And I was concerned. I said, but I knew it didn't want me, and I haven't seen it since. That's good.
That's great. Have you ever looked into something called the pale crawler at all, or the rake? Anything like that?
Yeah, I have. And actually, Steve pulled those up for me. And as far as the fingers and the color of the skin and the lurkiness about it, if they would have had fur and the ears and the pictures he brought up, then that would have been a close kind of description of the lankiness and the eerie crawlingness about it. Whatever, it was creepy. And I'm with you with the Dogman thing. I don't care about, if I see Bigfoot, great. I'm not worried about that, well, as much. But if I ever see this thing again, anytime I even hear Dogman, I get chills.
I don't
want anything to do with that. Yeah, that's just not something I want anything to do with.
Did you ever...
So anyway, that's it. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I got one more question, then we'll move on from this one. But did you ever go back into the restaurant or any businesses in that area and be like, hey, we saw something weird out in the parking lot, and have you guys ever heard anything else, anything like that?
I did ask one of the businesses there a little later, and they hadn't heard of anything. And I didn't really go back into that one and ask. I didn't know them well enough, but I let it go as public, talking to anybody or telling the story for a while. I just spent a lot of time on AOL just looking. But yeah, if I ever hear anything, I'll let you know if there's a sighting or anything of another one.
All right. I appreciate you sharing that with us. I know I can only imagine, man, if I experienced something like that, I would still be dealing with things from to this day. So thank you for going back to that point in your life for a few minutes. But so after that, what else did you guys experience?
Okay.
We have a couple of really good ones together that are bizarre. So I'll let Steve take over.
Like the old commercials. But wait, there's more. Okay. Back in 2009. Oh, I wanted to add something to you since you're the researcher, I'm going to give you a more pinpointable location or area. If you go to the BFRO website, which I did because I was trying to figure this thing out on that little hunting incident, there's 2 other incidences in that area where a gentleman was cutting wood, and he's been featured on a television show about his account. He left his trailer. He was cutting wood. He left his trailer and saw up there and got out of there because he saw something huge looking down at him on a hillside while he was cutting wood. And then in another incident, there was a Cassia County sergeant dispatcher and her grandson who were aggressively accosted by what she described as a Sasquatch that actually she saw and it charged at him in Wallstrom Hollow. So I was in that general area. I was a little more east, but about the same latitude as those other 2 sites. It's in the same general area, so I piqued my interest at that. But
Okay.
all right, I got more to go. Does that help you out any better?
Yes, that helps out. I'll have to look into that. That's Cassia County, Idaho. It looks, yeah.
Yep, Cassia County.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Okay, so in 2009, actually 2008, went with some friends and their adult kids. To give you a little background on this, on my friend, I'm not going to mention his name, but he's a Zuni Navajo, very spiritual, and we had talked about what he calls the Bigfoot, our old people that have lived here way before we have. And he says, I know of a few spots where something might happen, and it's a cool place and everything. So we ended up going, it's in between Leadore, Idaho, and Mackay, Idaho. It's that ridge right between it, just south of, what's that lake? Meadow Lake. Meadow Lake is another crater lake on the top of a hill. We were on the back side of that down below in a canyon called the Meadow Canyon. And we had set up camp early in the day. And if you look to the west, there's this really scenic alpine picturesque, I mean, it's really paintable mountain. And there's a trail that heads north on to the right. And then the left fork takes you down further west where there's a bunch of caves on the side of the hill and a lot of slate, sandstone kind of stuff. But this particular time, we decided to hike up the trail to see what was up in there. And so one of his son's friends had a Magellan GPS and I had a Garmin. And so we were just interested in to see which one performed a little better. So we had taken some survey tape out of our backpacks and we did waypoints and tied a piece of survey tape onto a limb roughly over the point where we had made the waypoint to see whose was going to be more accurate finding the waypoints on the way back. And so we hiked in, I know it was about 1.5 miles, 2 miles. It's pretty steep. We're at well over 7,500 feet. So you don't want to, unless you're in really good shape, you don't want to overexert yourself up that high. But we got towards the end of the trail, and there's a big pile of slatey earth, this kind of combination of slate, granite, earth. And there was this cedar tree that was really weird when we looked at it because all the branches on the tree had been knocked off. It looked like something had wrapped its hands around this tree. It was probably about 8 inches in diameter and just snapped off all the twigs and branches off to the ground. They were piled up at the trunk. And the top part of this tree, the tip of it was split down the middle and it was twisted down and it looked like a heart. It was tied off. It wasn't like a snag up. It was tied in a knot. And the tree was probably about 30, I would like to say 15 to 20 feet tall. This is a long time ago, so I'm just trying to repicture it in my mind. But anyhow, the odd thing to me was it was twisted. It was bent down. It looked like a heart. So the branches spread out and it was twisted down and tied together. Like the trunk was split from the top on its way down and tied into a knot. And we felt that was odd. And we turned around to head back to camp. And every once in a while, on the way up and on the way back, we were getting whiffs of really musky, just human BO. We were questioning each other who didn't shower, but it was really pungent. It was really strong. Didn't see anything or hear anything at all, but the scent was overwhelming. It just wasn't right. But there were still birds flying around and noises and that, so I don't know why that would be, but nothing weird of that sort was going on. What was really weird is coming back down the trail, we'd hit our waypoints and we'd look for the survey tape and the twigs. And everywhere we had tied survey tape to on the trees, they were snapped off and laying on the ground. I was like, okay, this is like crazy weird. We looked around for footprints, didn't see anything. We thought someone was messing with us. Something was messing with us. So we just continued back down the trail to camp. Before we get to that split in the trail on the hillside of this picturesque mountain I'm telling you about, I saw about 200 yards what appeared to me to be a large bear walking on all fours up towards the top of the ridge. It was traversing, so it wasn't going straight up. It was going up at an angle. And it was walking on all fours, but it was far enough away and obscured by the tops of these pines and cedars. It appeared to me to be a bear, but now I'm debating on whether or not it was something else, again, in retrospect. We got back to camp, and that was it for that time. Now, the next year, I took my now wife along with the same friends to go back to that canyon to camp. I had at the time a big, huge cabin tent. It was a spring bar. It has a lot of pegs on the bottom of it. There's 12 or 15 pegs you have to drive in, and then tension poles hold the walls up and the roof up. But as we were setting that up and pounding the stakes in, I'll probably need to backtrack a little bit, give you a better description. When you're pulling into the canyon, the metal part of it, you drive through these woods. It looks like Tolkien's Mirkwood Forest. It's like all these old, dead, twisty trees. There's nothing growing in there, and it's just weird. And that goes for about, I don't know, maybe about an eighth of a mile. It's not very long. And then there's a sinkhole, and you have to pick up your speed and drive around the edge of the sinkhole to navigate into the canyon to the left, and then you're in. And as you straighten out, head back west, if you look to the north, there's a cliff wall on another ridge that's not attached to that mountain I was telling you about. That was probably a couple 100 feet high. And that's relevant because when we were pounding the tent pegs, there were huge boulders getting pushed off the top of that cliff, and they were falling down. And we stopped a couple times and were like, what's going on? This is totally weird. And when we stopped pounding the pegs in the ground, that stopped altogether. And nothing else happened until later on in the evening, and that was pretty eventful. So I'll let my wife elaborate on what she heard, and we don't have a difference, but it's important for her to describe what she heard versus what I heard.
Okay. So that night, and we're speculating it was probably about 2 o'clock, 1:30, 2 o'clock after we sat around the campfire. And we went to bed, and I'm not sure how much longer after we had fallen asleep. We both woke up and just sprung up. The ground was rumbling. It sounded, I actually said, there's a herd of elk or something running through here, and you could feel it whoosh by the tent, and the rumbling was so intense, it could only be a herd of something. And I thought we were all going to get trampled. We had 3 tents sitting there. It was that loud and that scary. He jumped up and he grabbed his gun and grabbed his sight, and anyway, I was shaking, and I thought we were going to get trampled. So I let him be my outdoors and open the tent. The other people with us did the same thing, but Steve was the first one to look out, and I'll pass that back to him.
So the site she's talking about, I had a very primitive, I still have it. It's a very primitive Russian night vision monocular. And it's not the greatest picture. You can make out shapes a couple 100 feet away and whatnot. So I had grabbed my rifle that I took up there with me and the night vision, and I looked around. I didn't see anything, but I agree with her. We heard a bunch of, it was loud, it was thumpy. To me, That's what we, of course, trying to be logical and sensible. It alluded to that it was probably a herd of elk or deer or something, but the thumping and the ground vibration, it was a bit more than that, I think. Like I said, we all were looking at one another and that. We went to lay back down and we heard it again. And I stuck my night vision out the tent again. And I had parked my truck a good distance away from the tents because that's where we kept our coolers and stuff. And I didn't want that near the tents. And I looked up at my truck and I saw 4 large kind of blobs. That's how primitive that night vision sight was. Couldn't make out any great detail, but they were big. And they were on all fours, and 2 of them were in the bed of my truck. And so I picked up my keys out of my coat pocket, and I hit the emergency button, the panic button on my key fob. And they scattered off. The horn went off, the lights were flashing. They took off. But it was weird because they were high enough to where it was a Toyota Tacoma. And the backs of these humps were almost level with the truck bed. I don't know. I'm thinking in retrospect that maybe there was a group of juveniles or something in there. I don't know. They were just, like I said, I didn't have any great detail. These were like 80s, 70s, 80s era technology. Nothing like we have today. I've since upgraded them just for that reason. But that was kind of weird. Also, earlier in the evening, before it got dark, we hung up some glow sticks in this canyon wall. There's no one getting back in there. It's 21 miles from the main road on like a Jeep trail up into this meadow. There's no one coming up. And you go up in altitude about 2,500 feet. And we hung up these glow sticks, and we were plinking at them with our rifles. And we hit a couple of them, but some of them we left hanging in the tree. And we noticed later on that they were going out. So we thought, we'll go over and pick up our pieces now. We don't want to be litter bugs. Pick up the pieces of what we shot and what was hanging there. We got over there. The ones that we hadn't hit, we hung up, I think it was 6 light sticks, and we recovered 3 damaged ones. And we know the other 3 were just hanging there. None of those were found. Couldn't find them. So I can't tell you what happened to them. I don't know, other than the only logical thing would be is something picked those and amscrayed with them. But that was a crazy night for both of us. We all talked about it the next day and just left it at that. My friend, we just sat there gasped looking at each other. And then we started talking about the year before. And I'm like, you're right. There's old people up here. I'm thoroughly convinced there is. And we didn't see them. But the next morning, it's even wilder.
Yeah.
We go to pick sage because we like to smudge our house and smudge ourselves with sage. And at about a certain altitude, there's a different variety of sage that smells really pleasant. And so we went down to pick some of that. And so we left campsite with a couple plastic bags, and I had nothing but a tomahawk on me. And we walked down, and it was basically, I'd probably say a good third of a mile away from camp, back down the road, and we went into that Mirkwood forest area. And then there's a clearing after that. Like I said, we got past that, and we were in there picking the sage, and it was a lot of it. And as we were there probably, maybe 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
On the ridge line next to us, which parallels that road in through that Mirkwood forest, as I describe it, there was the sound of a charging whatever, trees crashing, huge grunts and growls. It wasn't a bear. I know every animal out here, what they sound like. And it was nothing like that. But we didn't see anything. It scared Gina so bad, she started to take off. And I don't blame her. I was like, Gina, don't run if you'll set off a predatory response. And all I've got is a tomahawk. So she stopped, thank goodness, and I caught up to her. And we hustled it back to camp, and we told my friends about it. And they were like, let's just pack up and get out of here. And we didn't. So we cut the weekend short. to get out of there because it was just there was too much craziness going on. It really was crazy. So I'm open for questions on that incident.
That man, what? Oh man, that is a lot happened to you in 2 days. I want to double check. So when you were looking at your truck, the 4 large blobs, all of those were on all fours, you said?
Yeah, but 2 of them were in the bed of the truck. The tailgate was down. 2 of them were in the bed of the truck.
Okay.
So the Tacoma I had at the time, it had a 3-inch lift on it. It wasn't super high off the ground, but to have the backs of those humps, that's all I could tell you is they look, I could say they were more bear-like, but what's the likelihood of having, I don't know, they could have been bears, but I don't think so because the weight of the running that we experienced beforehand was crazy. And I didn't see anything the first time I looked out. The second time, which was not too long after the first time I saw those in there, 2 of them. And the backs of them went up almost to the top of the bed of the truck. And that would be bigger than a bear on all fours. We have black bears up in there, and we do have grizzlies out here, but in that area, you're not likely to see a grizzly. On our next and last final incident, we'll talk about, there could be grizzlies in there, not likely. But you'd have to get closer to the Rocky Mountains and the Continental Divide before you start running into those.
Have you ever been back to Meadow Canyon again?
No, and we will not go.
No, okay.
No, we're not going back there. That's not a party time.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, it would take a lot to go back there for me too. That was a lot of really close stuff for you to deal with, but feel free to continue with what your next experience was.
I know. This will be our last one, I think, and that's it, really. In another area, closer to your very interested, you vocalized on your podcast how interested you are in this area. Palisades Reservoir.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Okay, so we're a little northeast of there, like maybe about 5 or 6 miles on the South Fork of the Snake River, accessed it's Icy Canyon, but it goes back further. It keeps going until the road ends, and you're probably about 5 or 6 miles from your Swan Valley incident, and then just down the road a little bit is Palisades Reservoir. So, and this was in 2011. Me and my wife wanted to spend an overnight in the tent next to the river, and we found this cute little flat spot that you could fit your tent and your pickup truck in, and that was it. And so we set up tent and had a little fire going, just sitting there chilling out. All of a sudden, around 11:30, we were just looking over the river, and this very large object, probably about 200 yards away, 250 yards away, on the other side of the Snake, where there's no access, road access into that area, this large humanoid object came out of the tree line onto the sandbar, and it was weaving back and forth like a primate. I mean, I've seen videos of apes, and that's what they do. And I had a 500 lumen flashlight, and I turned it on to see if I could get more detail on what this thing was, and it would just merely walk back into the tree line until I would turn the flashlight out, and then it would come back out and start doing the same thing over again. Now it gets even a little more interesting. While this is going on, we've got orbs everywhere. There was like probably 8 or 9 orbs, and there was no color to them, just white, bright white light. They were about the size of, I'm just guesstimating, probably like large beach balls, flying all over the place. And when they'd fly near the canyon wall to the South Fork of the Snake, the canyon walls would illuminate. And we started seeing these things roughly a little bit just before we saw the object, but they were in the distance just darting around. when we started seeing this thing, the orbs got closer and were like going everywhere. It was nutty. And we didn't see anything as far as great detail on that, just a silhouette, but it was a crazy night. Oh, you want to interject on that incident?
No, it was a crazy night. These lights, orbs or whatever they are, they were going, there was no formation. I counted between 8 and 9. They were moving all over the place, so it was hard to get the exact number, but they were going 90-degree angles, right? They were going every which way and turning direction up and down, and it was like a whirlwind of crazy. So we're already stunned by the silhouette, and then all that started happening. We were looking at each other, looking up, looking across the river. This went on for a good half hour. And then finally the orbs disappeared, and we were like, what? Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. And we sat down by the fire. We didn't know. We were just in shock, really. And we looked back over across the river, and this thing was doing his sway thing again, and the orbs were gone. And then he again grabbed his flashlight, put it up there, and then it slowly stepped backwards into the wood line again. And that was the end of it. Now you're probably going to ask, did you guys sleep? Not really. So we did climb back in the tent and listened for every little thing we could hear. And I kept asking him, are you sure that thing, nothing can cross the river, right? And he said, the current's too strong. The current's too strong. And I'm like, I'm hoping you're right, because we didn't know if we were going to be abducted or Sasquatched or what was going to happen.
Yeah, we should have probably packed up and come home, but we were like, no, we're going to stay.
Wow.
Yeah, we did leave first thing in the morning, though. So anyway, that was the extent of that one.
That's wild. Boy, was there any way you're looking at it with the light of the flashlight, but it's across the river? Could you tell things like it looked like it had no clothes, or if it was?
Oh yeah, it
Solid dark.
It was just solid dark. Even with a flashlight, I think you would see some sort of contrast, but it was just dark black, and it was tall. I would say it was a good 8 to 9 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
Just from looking at it the next day. But it would just come out of the tree line far enough. You look at the yard, and I had a pretty good flashlight for the time. It would just light it up enough for to see like a matte finish to whatever it was. And it would just back in to the tree line, avoiding the light. And then when I turned the light off, it would take a couple of seconds and just meander on back out there. And it wasn't like a hurried pace. It wasn't aggressive. It was just weaving back and forth, whatever that might mean. And I would guess primate language. I have no idea what that means. But that area, I will add, Palisades and that. There's a few areas in Palisades I will not camp. There are a few areas in Palisades I will not ride my four-wheeler through because I've gotten the GBs, and I don't ignore the EBGBs anymore. I really don't. That's just your human instinct telling you that something's wrong.
Oh, absolutely.
But that whole area, I'm trying to think of that creek down there, McCoy Creek. Yeah, McCoy Creek has got a lot of stories down in there. Off podcast, on podcast, with BFRO, and that people we know that around here, the biggest thing is I'm not saying they're accepted, but it's approached nonchalantly. In other words, you're going to see stuff out there, pretty much attitude. Since I've lived here since 85, and I just give you everything that I've seen that is weird, but you are right about Palisades. There's a lot of weird stuff going on down around that area, and we weren't far from it. But if you ever get a chance to come out and visit, have a look around there, and you'll see it's like prime habitat.
It's beautiful.
Gotcha. I had a feeling ever since the one episode I did with the older guide hunter gentleman, and he just had some wild stories about Palisades. But I'm definitely going to look up McCoy Creek. One more question for you about the humanoid figure that you saw. So when you shine a flashlight at a human, usually most humans, they'll react where they're going to like wince, cover their face because of the light. They didn't do anything like that? Did
not do anything like that. It just kind of walked slow paced backwards and just went into the tree line. Now, so all you have is tules. It's just basically Russian olive and tules in there. So it's a thick brush. And then you'll have, if there's cows on that side, you'll have probably some cow trails busted through there or whatnot. But it would just go back into the tree line until I turned the flashlight off, and it would come out. And there was enough light from the moon that you could see it okay. without the flashlight, but it was just black and tall. It wasn't very thick though. It was pretty, I wouldn't say super skinny. It was kind of like, I don't know, like looking at I wouldn't say a basketball player, more like just a football player, but not like a pro football player, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Buffed out.
From our distance.
Yeah, from our distance.
Across the river.
Yeah. And
but the other thing I noticed is that, so this is back in 2011. Have you guys called it quits then for going out and doing crazy camping stuff?
No. We still go out. I just was out hunting by myself yesterday, and in an area that as far as I know, there's nothing going on up in there. But knowing my history, and I don't know, like there's two emojis, the poo emoji and the magnet emoji. Kind of neat. I don't know, but yeah, I hunted all day. I hunt by myself once in a while. I like to hunt with a friend or someone, but during the week, everybody's working, and that was like my only free time. And the weather hasn't been that great out here, so.
Yeah, I would go back to the last camp spot for sure. Meadow Canyon, no way in heck would I go back there. So.
Absolutely.
Kind of where we're at.
But there's the areas we've been talking about. I would imagine most of them, besides Bigfoot, have pretty big predators in their listeners.
Oh yeah,
you need to be very cautious about places.
And that's why I always pack a firearm in there. When you're out here in the wilderness, you get a lot of tourists that come in through here, and they're just totally nonchalant to the fact that they're part of the food chain. That's really what it amounts to. I don't ever go out without something that will do substantial damage to a bear-sized animal. I will word it that way, whether it be a 12-gauge shotgun or a 10-millimeter or a rifle of some kind. I usually carry an M1A out there if I'm not, just as a camp gun. But yeah, you don't want to go out there without being armed.
In isolated camp areas. Now, campgrounds, we would. And we have gone camping multiple times in between these, but these are just when we've had encounters of some sort or odd things happen.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, in our experiences, the only aggression that I really witnessed was when we were picking the sage. Out of all mine, that's the only really aggressive. I felt terrified when it was like a false charge, and it was going through everything in its path. And it got probably less than 60 feet away from us, but we couldn't see it because it's really thick. And like I said, it was just full of dead wood, and it was crazy. But whatever, it was totally unfamiliar to me in sound. And we got out of there. It was like time to go. It's just too flipping weird.
Just a fascinating group of experiences that you have had in some really interesting areas that, for the most part, there's a lot of new stuff. I would be interested to hear if any listeners have experienced stuff by, what was that creek again? It was McCoy Creek. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, McCoy Creek. Yeah, McCoy Creek. I've heard of stories of kids getting stalked, not taken, but something creeping, like spider walking. I've heard several stories of spider walking in the grass, where they're out. Apparently, they're like outstretched and walking around their fingertips. So weird for me, but I've heard stories of that. I've heard people getting spooked by shadows popping down behind their cargo trailers, people's trailers getting bumped and stuff. They've actually evacuated that area a couple times, and they weren't too descriptive of what was going on. It was just pack your crap and get out of here. Something's going on, and
really?
Something going on.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That was. Then the last one was I think it was in the 9 or maybe early 2000s when some hunters came down when I was up there, and they said, there's something down in the ravine, everybody leaving. We had our kids and we were camping with some friends, and every little camp spot along the way was full, and we were told to get out of there. And we did. Everybody packed up that there was a bear or something, but these hunters said it was not a bear. And that's the only thing I remember from that is, so check into that and see if that might be on somebody else's side, if it was recorded somewhere.
Absolutely. I've never heard anything like that before. That sounds like it could be an incredible account. So I'll have to do some digging regarding that. That would be in the McCoy Creek area as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. Wow. Gina and Steve, thank you so much for coming on the show today and for sharing all the experiences that you've had over the years. I hope maybe these will unlock some memories for other listeners, and they can feel free to reach out, bigfootsociety@gmail.com, or they can leave a comment as well. But I thank you so much, guys, for coming on. And if you ever have anything else happen, feel free to reach out. I'd love to talk to you guys again.
I'll definitely keep my eyes and ears open for you because I'm out there quite a bit. So
Yeah, thank you for having us and bearing with us through our adventures.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. I saw your comment and it looked pretty interesting. You've had stuff going on since 1998.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Okay.
I'd love to hear about it.
Okay, first I'm going to start off. I have speech problems, so I stutter and sound funny, just to let the viewers know. But so I work at an Expedition Bigfoot in Cherry Log, Georgia.
Now we're talking.
And yes, it's super awesome. I got this job a year ago, but for years when I told my first story, it was, oh, you're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy. And then years later, I end up working for a Bigfoot museum. So it's super exciting. I want to start off with telling you I've been on Sasquatch Chronicles.
Okay.
I'm going to go into my story now.
Okay.
So, 1998, I was 15 years old, and I was dating a guy, and we were coming home, or he was bringing me home. We were coming up our dirt road, which is wildlife management, and we had stopped arguing back and forth, and this guy is super big. He's 6'4", 6'5". I can't really remember now exactly how big his height is, but we're sitting back and forth, we're arguing, stupid teenage stuff, whatever. But he looks at me and he's like, get in the truck. And I'm going to argue to the end. And I'm like, no, we're not done. So I'm arguing with him and I'm like, no, we're not done. He's like, no, get in the truck. And by the time he's like ghost white. And he's like, get in the truck. And I look where he's looking and I see this massive creature. And it's doing the weaving in between the trees. And it's checking us out. It's not aggressive or anything. It's like, what's going on? What's fixing to happen? So it's weaving in and out of the trees. And it's about 50 yards from us. And it is super huge. Like it's shoulder... I can't even say a football player that it would be big enough to be shoulder length with. Because it was so broad. But I'm looking up at this thing and I'm going, oh my gosh, if that thing's real, what else is real? Because I grew up with all kinds of boogerman stories. And I actually finally get in the truck. Let's go. It's being super docile. It's not being aggressive or anything. And we take off. We go to the house. And that was the end of it. We talked about it a couple of times. But I'm no longer with this guy. And throughout the years, I've lived in the same place. But we've had so many things happen around here.
So I've talked to one of your coworkers, Amanda.
Yeah, Amanda, the Bigfoot lady.
Yeah, you guys have a lot of stuff.
Yeah. We have some amazing stories that come in.
I can't imagine working at a place like that. So are you, let's say, what's the most recent thing you've experienced in that area?
For me, it's been probably about 4 years since I've had anything happen around here, but everybody in the neighborhood has had something they finally have went, I think we've heard or seen or had some kind of interaction with your Bigfoot. And these are the same people that criticized me and thought that I was crazy when I was a kid.
So are people having actual visual sightings or what kind of things are going on?
So my neighbor, which she just moved away last year, but my neighbor down here, she was from New York, moved to Florida, and then moved up here. And she had called me one night, which she called me all the time about bugs and all kinds of critters. But she called me one night and she's like, Marantha, there is a grizzly bear down here. And I'm like, we don't have grizzlies. And she's like, well, it looks like it's sitting on the bank close to the creek. And she's like, I don't know what it's doing, but it's just sitting there. And she's like, I'm fixing to get my gun. And she's like, because it's a grizzly bear. And I'm like, honey, we don't have grizzly bears. You might see a cinnamon black bear, but we don't have grizzly bears at all. And she was freaking out. But that was her calling me and flipping out, and I was like, I think you're seeing our Bigfoot. And she's like, what is a Bigfoot?
Oh, welcome to the party. Wow.
But that wasn't the first time that she's seen it neither, because after that she had seen it at the end of the porch of her house. So she was like, oh my gosh, it's not a bear, it's standing on two legs, it's bipedal. Because I had went into everything, telling her, like, Bigfoot's bipedal, bear can't walk very long on their back legs unless they have injured paws, blah, blah. I went to school for wildlife biology. So I'm trying to explain everything to her, going, no, I think you're seeing our Bigfoot, really.
That area down there, are they pretty much, for the most part, non-aggressive encounters?
No, we haven't had any aggressive. It's all been awesome. Very docile.
That's good. That's good. Man, I gotta get down there someday. Just wanted to see the museum, and just there's so much. I take so many reports from the Chattahoochee National Forest, and the Northwest Georgia too is wild.
We just had an encounter in Cherry Log.
Okay.
The first one was August 7th. And then a couple weeks later in the same area, there was another encounter. So, yeah, you need to come and check it out. We've got major stories that are coming in and out around here.
My goodness, and you're probably talking to people every day about stuff.
Yes, I do.
That's awesome.
I really do, but I'm like, I'm in my heaven with people coming in and talking to me because, like I said, I was treated like the weird child, and everybody saying, hey, no, that's not real. And now even my mom, she was one that, no, Martha, you're crazy. But now she's even going, she calls me constantly because of stuff we hear around the house. And not even around the house. Her sister owns a property in Alabama, and she's coming and she's like, listen to this. And I'm like, oh, are we a Bigfoot enthusiast now?
So they're hearing like vocalizations or?
Yeah. Around the house, we have something that mimics a dog. And like my little road, I'm related to everyone on my road, or they've been around long enough I'm related to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
We know all the pets that they have. They've all made their rounds or whatever, but there is something around here that mimics a dog, and it's not something that's trying to yip like a coyote or anything of that matter. It is something that's trying to, it sounds like it's trying to be a coon dog, but it's not. You can tell that it's robotic. And then we got something, I say something, but it's not something. I'm pretty sure that it is our big hairy friend.
Yeah.
Because it likes to mimic an owl too.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. I hear a lot of that.
One thing, I was search and rescue back when I was younger.
Okay.
And I had to do training in our forest around here way back in the forest. And I can't remember what a colony of owls is called, or a flock or whatever. But when they start going off, they sound like a bunch of monkeys.
Yeah, barred owls.
Yes, it's wild. And if you grew up in this kind of environment, you know what they sound like. But I've had the neighbors, the family call and be like, "What is this? This is not our normal stuff." And I'm like, "I've been telling you for years. It is something that y'all keep telling me I'm crazy about."
That's awesome. Do you have a favorite report that you've taken while working in the museum?
Yes, I do. This one is out of Alabama, but the guy was in the military and they had hunting property in Alabama. And he said that they went going in and went hunting, everything, didn't have luck that day, and was coming back out and lining it going into their hunting property. There's, I don't know if it's big bushes of sawgrass or what it was that he kept saying, but it was bushes. And he said he walked in and was coming back out, and he stopped and noticed that there was an extra bush and that they had fired to scare it off and everything. And it just stood up and was like, "Okay, fine, I'm leaving."
Oh, man.
But it messed with them after that, too, because when they'd set up their blinds and stuff, that they noticed that it had messed with everything. And that is when it comes to around here, but I have other ones that are outside of the United States, because we have people that come in that are outside of the United States as well.
Oh, I'm sure you have people from all over the world come in, which is amazing. Cool stuff. All right. It was a pleasure meeting you, and thank you for chatting. Is this a conversation I can put up on the podcast?
You can. Just
Cool.
explain that I have speech problems.
Yeah, I wouldn't have even noticed anything if you hadn't mentioned it, but I appreciate you coming up.
Oh, you're welcome. You have a good night.
You too, man.
Bye.
Awesome. Oh, that was fun. I like talking to people for that museum. Expedition Bigfoot Museum in, what is the actual town? It is Blue Ridge, Georgia.
Hello.
Hi there. Hi there.
Hey man, I'm happy. I'm glad that you give me the opportunity to tell my story.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Well, I'm gonna ask you. I guess you had experience yourself.
I've had some weird stuff happen. I haven't had any visual sightings, but I've had stuff happen from trees got pushed over. I've heard whoops in Iowa, tree knocks. I've been roared and screamed at in Oregon. All sorts of weird stuff, but I've never had a visual.
Okay, I didn't have a visual, but I had a shadow, and let me just explain what happened. I have a friend of mine that his grandfather had 130 acres of land connected to a state park in Atlanta called Sweetwater Creek Park, State Park, and his land is connected to the park. You know what I mean? Every night the deers would come towards the property. He had a pond in the front and everything. So one night I'm in front of the house, and I've heard all the animals and what they do when the deer get scared. I've heard it all. But this one time I'm sitting in front of the house, right? And this thing sits in the middle of the woods, man. And him and his girlfriend are in the couch inside. They're flirting or whatever. They're having a conversation. I'm outside. So I hear this thing running up on a hill. But at first I thought it was a deer, right? I thought it was a deer. But then this thing was stomping. If you was watching a Marvel movie, like if the Hulk was running through the woods, boom, and you could hear it plowing through the woods, breaking branches. This thing was unstoppable, right? So I get nervous, man. So I grabbed a quarter out of my pocket and I start banging on the window because I don't want to be, because at night you can hear everything over there. And so I'm banging on the window with a quarter, trying to get his attention to come out. So he finally comes out, right? When he comes out with his pit bull, the creature stopped running, right? So the creature had reached the bottom of the hill, right behind where the pond was at. The pond was facing the house. You know what I'm saying? It was at the front door. You see the pond right in front of you. Behind the pond, it was maybe an acre or whatever. That's where the thing was. It had stopped running. So when he came out with his dog, I was like, yo, man, I think Bigfoot is out there. I think Bigfoot is up there. So he's looking at me when I was drinking a beer. He was looking at me like, oh, man, you bugging, man. Yeah, you drunk, man. I'm like, man, I'm telling you, man, I'm serious, man. Look, just stay. And next you know, he said, you crazy. He stops walking in the house. The creature starts coming our way through the woods. Boom, boom, boom. You hear all kind of branches breaking. This thing is real, man. This is nothing that you could just hear and just dismiss it. Oh, that's a deer. There's no way. Then the thing stops, man. Maybe, man, I can't even calculate the distance like that. It wasn't that far away. Maybe 30 yards, 40 yards. But it stopped at the edge of the woods. It didn't show itself. It stopped at the edge of the woods. And it let out a roar that didn't match its size to me. The roar was so loud and it was so intense that I can't explain it, man. I've been looking for that roar through all kind of monster roar things. I even watched the Bigfoot channels, and it didn't sound like none of them. This thing is, oh man, I can't. The closest sound I ever got from it, I could play it for you. It was just a little bit of that sound in that tone. Do you want to hear it? Like what it might have sounded like?
Sure.
And let me see. Hold on. Let me see if I got it. I got to look it up. But anyways, it let out a roar so loud, right? That my friend, he opened the door and ran inside the house. The dog followed him inside. And his dog, a pit bull, used to chase all the deer and any animal that would come out to the neighborhood. That dog went inside, man. I'm talking about went inside. And then when they went inside, the monster let up another roar, real loud. So I'm like that, dude, I'm not scared, but I'm shocked. This thing is real. Because I was one of those guys that where you look at it like, yeah. And then the thing is, it's hard for me to tell the story because when you're on the other side, the people that have witnessed, it's different from being on the other side that never witnessed. For you trying to explain it to somebody that never, ever heard the story, they looking at you like that cognitive dissonance kicks in, and they're not trying to, they already magically shut you out. You crazy, you on drugs, and all this stuff that you, and I'm like, oh, wow. So me and my friend, we witnessed it together, right? This happened Friday night. We went to work on Monday. Monday, I'm telling everybody at work. And they all look at me like I was insane. Then I see him, yo, Mac, tell him. He denied it, man. He let me down, man. I was so pissed at him. He didn't join the story because he was a driver, and he didn't want anybody to think, that's what he told me. He didn't want anybody to think that he was messed up. I said, dude, man, this is a story to tell, man. I was on a positive to trying to see what's going on. He denied it. And the thing is that ever since that day, I've been looking into Bigfoot. So I went into I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. After the two roars, the monster started walking up the hill and let out a third roar right in the middle of the mountain. But it was lower than the first two. And then when he got all the way to the top of the hill, he let out another roar. So altogether, he let out 4 roars that I've never heard in my life, ever, from any creature that I've seen on TV, even from the Godzilla movies. I've been looking for this roar, and I haven't found it yet. It's unique. It almost got like elephant in it.
Oh, I hear that a lot. Yep.
Yeah, it almost had like elephant type to it, but it was real. Man, it was intense, man. If you would have heard that roar, you would turn around, you want to see Godzilla behind it. It was that intense. And it was with authority. So I've been looking for all this stuff about Bigfoot in it. We still going to the property. So next thing you know, that same girl that was with him that night, she never heard the roar. She was inside the house. There was music playing. She didn't hear it. She comes back with a friend of hers, right? They visit us at the house. So my buddy needed time to be by himself with her. So he left me with the other girl outside. So I put her in my pickup truck and I'm driving her around the property. We got a lot of, you can drive around. And I'm telling her the story. Oh, yeah. I'm telling her the story. And she's like looking at me like this guy is insane. And when we get back towards the house, and as soon as she got out the car, that thing roared, but from far away during the day. And she said, what is that? And I said, well, that's the thing I've been talking about. That's the thing I've been telling you. Man, that girl started crying. She couldn't believe that she heard that. So that's when, if she heard it from far away and felt that way, imagine how I heard it. Because it sounded like a serious monster out there. And then I started looking around. If there any sightings of Bigfoot on Sweetwater Creek Park, no. But then the next park over, the next state park, which is in Hiram, Georgia, there was 2 sightings of people reported over there. And then the further you went up north, it became common. But this park is right there at the edge of Atlanta. You know what I mean? So I was like, what's this creature doing in the city, man? You know what I mean? So it just doesn't commute, because normally I thought that those things would be in the remote areas and stuff like that. But this thing is right there in Atlanta, man. So I'm trying to see how this thing is surviving in a state park. I guess it knows what it's doing, man. I don't know if it's been there all the time. Does it have family members? I don't know. But it was an experience of a lifetime. I'm into Bigfoot big time. I went in Tennessee to the Bigfoot convention over there. I went to the Rocky Mountains to do I was working at the Rocky Mountains, but I went to pictures with the carvings of Bigfoot. I mean, I'm into it, but I don't have a community that I could talk to and share stories, because everybody that knows me since I grow up, believe me. But everybody outside of that knows me, no, they think I'm insane. So it's hard to reach people. And then when you talk to different people from different aspects, I've gotten this a lot from like religious people. That's demons and all this crap. And I'm like, man, come on, man, get out of here with that, man. It's not that, man. There's something out there. And there's so many people reporting it. And then I was one of those guys on the other side. Yeah, it's a possibility, but it's never been approved. There's never been no actual, you know what I'm saying? There's never been anything solid for anybody to run with. And then the thing is that now when I had my experience, I didn't have nothing solid to run with either. Just a story to tell. So it's hard to push it across because people don't have good evidence.
No, I get it. But I do this so that people have a place to share what they experience. I appreciate you coming up, sir. And hey, is this a conversation that I can use in my Bigfoot podcast?
Absolutely, man. Yeah. What is your podcast anyway? So I could check it out.
It's called Bigfoot Society. I do have one episode you would really like to hear. A lot of reports from like Douglasville and South.
That's where it was close to Douglasville.
Right. Yep. So it's episode 816, and that's a lot of Georgia stuff in that area. You'll like to listen to.
Okay. Give me the name again, sir. I'm sorry.
Just look up Bigfoot Society episode 816.
And this is on YouTube?
Yeah, you can find it on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcast.
Man, I appreciate you letting me up, man. Thank you for having this community up, man, because we need a platform somewhere to talk about this stuff.
All right. Appreciate you coming up. You have a good one.
You too, man.
Before we wrap this episode, I want to say something directly to a very specific group of listeners. If you're in the military, any branch or forces, and if you've seen something that no one can explain, or if you're a national park ranger or forestry worker who's been told to stay quiet, or if you're a pilot who's seen something strange down on the ground, or if you're with the FBI, a federal agency, or working intelligence, and you stumbled upon something you're not allowed to talk about, and if you're a firefighter, paramedic, or search and rescue responder who's heard screams or found tracks that didn't make sense, if you're in the logging industry, on a remote oil field, or a trucker with government contracts, and you've had something happen that you've never told a soul, and if you're a biologist, a wildlife specialist, or a field researcher under contract who has found evidence you're not allowed to report, if you're a pastor, a missionary, or someone on a spiritual retreat, and you saw something that shook your faith, or if you work in the shadows, CIA, NSA, or anything with clearance, and you've seen what the public hasn't, then I want to talk to you. Even if it's anonymous, you can reach me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. The world needs to hear what you've been forced to carry alone, and you're not alone. You've got the story. We've got the mic. See you in the woods. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Every encounter we share reminds us that the world is bigger and stranger than we think, and that the truth is often hiding just beyond the tree line. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, hit the bell so you don't miss the next episode, and share this with a friend who's into mysteries, monsters, or the unexplained. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcast, please follow the show there and leave us a 5-star positive review, because all of that helps more people discover the show. And remember, if you or someone you know has had a Bigfoot sighting, please, I'd love to hear from you. So email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com and let's start the conversation. If If you haven't gotten a chance yet, check out our membership community over at www.bigfootsocietypodcast.com. And that's where you can hear tomorrow's episode today, early and ad-free, and members-only episodes every week. Also, it's a place to connect with other people that are into the Bigfoot subject as much as you are. Thanks again for following along with the Bigfoot Society. Until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and never stop asking what else might be out there. And see you in the woods.